There's one elderly woman, she's since passed a few years ago. She spoke Yiddish, she was a survivor. She'd come to shul. Every time she was, there was Yantiv and she spoke, she'd just start crying. She'd be like, you can't imagine what it means to me that we're all sitting here together in our historic synagogue, 150-year-old synagogue, and we're able to openly celebrate Sukkot, Pesach, Hanukkah, Purim. You don't understand what an open modern-day miracle this is.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have Rabbi Chaim Danziger, otherwise known as the Rostov Rabbi. Together with his wife and children, he is a shliach in Rostov, Russia. Welcome, Rabbi Chaim. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and hello from Russia.
Hello from Russia. You just got back, right? You just got back.
I've arrived back this morning from the Kinnos.
From the Kinnos. Wow. Okay.
So the real question is not when I got back, when I left, how long I was traveling back. That's the real question.
How long were you traveling? What's the travel time?
39 hours door to door.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Wow.
And I guess that's just one indication of what life in Russia is like one of the difficulties or one of the small difficulties or inconveniences.
Yeah, exactly. Inconveniences that comes with the territory. Used to be a lot easier, but now it's I left Tuesday morning for 4 a.m. and got in Thursday at midnight. Well, no, midnight, 4 a.m. Yeah, it was busy with the time difference. It was 39 hours. So it was
Is that now because of the war? Is that what it is?
So basically, our airport's closed. Yeah, our airport's closed ever since things took a turn here. And now it means I have to drive 6 hours to the closest operating airport. And then from there, you have to find a way to travel because there's no simple flight with a stopover. So this time, for the first time, I tried a new route, which was through Uzbekistan, through Tashkent. When I first bought the ticket, usually it's through Turkey and it's two separate airlines. And my wife's not too fond about traveling through Turkey. So we figured we'd try something new. Uzbekistan, Tashkent, and who would have imagined that just before we're meant to fly there, this horrible, horrific story about a fellow shliach who was killed by terrorists from Uzbekistan, as they found out. So it was a little bit of but thank God we made it, and we had a bunch of shlodim flying together, and now we're back where we're meant to be.
And now you're back.
Yeah.
Wow. So. I mean, this leads to the question of why. Well, tell us a little about your background. Where are you from originally?
So I'm from Canada, from Toronto. My wife's
my hometown.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't born. I was born in Ottawa, but I grew up in Toronto. And my wife's from Pittsburgh, and her life's dream has been to move to Russia. My wife.
Your wife's dream.
I'm joking. She's gonna see this.
I can't imagine anyone's dream to move to Russia.
No, she's from Pittsburgh, and we for me it all started when I was 18 and I came to run a camp for the first time in this part of the world, and it's a long, interesting story. But basically, I was just so moved by what I saw that.
What did you see that moved you?
So I was invited to come help operate a camp, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't speak a word of Russian. My parents were born in Canada. My grandparents were born in Canada. So it's not like I'm second generation or had some Russian, but I was studying in a yeshiva in Israel. And in the summer, what do we do? In Chabad yeshivas, we're taught to, in our free time, to find a way to do something impactful to help Jewish communities and to help especially with camps, running camps, helping kids. So I was planning on going to California. A friend of mine convinced me, let's go to Crimea, let's go help. There's children there, they need support, they need help. I didn't really want to, but he convinced me, and I ended up in 1998, if I'm saying, we landed there, and I was driven 20 hours to the campsite, and I was given a whole bunch of kids that were supposed to be my bunk. We didn't have any common language, we didn't know what we were doing, but I just saw kids that came to camp. They came without suitcases, they came with just bags. And I was like, where's their stuff? And they said, this is everything. And they had just one change of clothing. Each night they'd take a bar of soap by the sink. They'd wash their clothes. They'd hang it up to dry, and they'd switch the next day. And there was poverty. But what really touched me was their lack of any knowledge of anything Jewish. 70 years of communism, it had its toll. But they had this thirst, this desire to learn, to become Jews, to be proud of their heritage. But what really threw me off, what really changed my life was about a week and a half or 2 weeks into camp, when a camper came up to me and he said, Chaim, yachachu abrazanya, I want to do a bris. And I just
Mm.
didn't make any sense. A kid, he's 14. I have campers 14 years old. They're almost bigger than me. These big guys, and I'm a camp. He wants to do a bris. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like 8. We do a bris at 8 days old. So I didn't even know what to say. I just gave him some. I gave him a basketball. He ran off. He came back, and I really want to do a bris. I gave him candy. We had, we always had in our pockets American candy. That was like the way. If the going gets tough, candy solves
Just like,
everything.
okay.
So I pulled out
Of
every
course.
candy. Exactly. I pulled out every candy I had. I gave it to him, and I thought, okay, he's off that night. I had a meeting with the head staff, and I said, we have a problem. This kid in my bunk wants to do a bris. And he said, yeah, the moel's coming. And I said, here, it's a camp. Yeah, the moel's coming.
Oh, wow.
And sure enough, a couple of days later, the moel showed up, and these children that were denied having a bris at 8 days old. Why? Because their parents knew nothing about it. Suddenly
Mm.
now, at age 14, they just felt this, I want to get a Jewish name. I want to come back to my people. And a great self-sacrifice to themselves. They did a bris in camp. They chose a Jewish name. I was a sandak. I was holding their head as they did it. This boy Dima took the name David. Ruslan took the name
Wow.
Reuven. Anton took the name Tzemach. And I just left that summer thinking, wow, look at the sacrifice they have for Yiddishkeit, for being Jewish, for, coming back to the fold, to their heritage. What am I doing? What sacrifice do we have in Toronto? What,
Right.
and that just made me think. And then I came back. So for me, it was always like a given. I came back, I ran camps. I established one of the bigger camps here called Yeka, which was,
Mm.
a camp that really made a big impact. And I always knew I wanted to come back here to serve, to be a shliach in the country, in this part of the world. This is where Chabad.org, birthplace was, in Russia, and they suffered through terrible hard times, difficult times, communist times. The Nazis came and occupied many parts of the country and the city I'm in, and now it's time. Let's give back. Let's help these Jews come back.
Wow. So what is it about the Jews in Russia that, I mean, I'm thinking about 14-year-olds, in another country in America, hear about their heritage. I'm not so sure that they'd be so quick to raise their hand and say, I want to have a bris, and keep on badgering the rabbi to get a bris. What is it about the Jews in Russia that you think is so different, is so full of this closeness, this warmth to Yiddishkeit?
It's a great question. I have to ask myself that as well. Like, why, they lived without anything. What's bringing them back? I think there's a concept that the Jewish soul is as strong as it needs to be. So when you're brought up in a country,
Mhm.
in a place that you have everything accessible, you have multiple synagogues to choose from, you have multiple schools to go to, you have many different kosher restaurants. You don't feel the need, I could go here, I could go there, or I could go anywhere, or I'd go nowhere. It doesn't really. But
Mhm.
when you're brought up in a place that some of these basic Jewish aspects of life don't exist, you have a thirst, and a neshama wants it. It wants to feel. And what I see is that people that deal with difficulties, they find inner strength to fight these, to come out strong and do some tremendously inspiring things that I myself, like when I was witnessing the bris of these boys, I was thinking, would I do a bris in such
Right.
circumstances? Never. Doesn't make sense. But why?
Mm.
I don't have that challenge, and therefore I don't have the strength. God gives a person exactly the strength he needs to deal with the challenges he's given. So for me, I don't have that challenge, and therefore I'm not given the tools to deal with it. But here
Mhm.
they're given, and I think what it is this I always wonder, and what comes to mind is they lived through so many difficult times. There's a certain Jewish pride that existed in Jews here. When it was impossible to live and practice the Jew, what did they do? They moved Judaism to the kitchen, and suddenly for them, Judaism became eating gefilte fish. Gefilte fish is
Mm.
in Russian called farshirov and ayriba. Every Jew here, especially the Babis, you ask them farshirov and ayriba,
Really?
their eyes light up. That for them is like
Oh,
everything. There's a Jewish dish called farshmak. Doesn't sound like a very good word, right?
right.
It's like something you're cursing, so you say farshmak. What's farshmak? It's ground. It's a different type of fish and different types of bread and apple. You see the ingredient you never want to touch. Like for me as a
Right.
Canadian, I'd never touch it. But for them, this is what they grew up with, a cheap fish that they were able to mash up and make something. And that was the Jewish food, simis. So for them, that Judaism became in the kitchen because no one gonna press you until you don't eat Jewish food. So for them, matzah was every year. Comes Pesach, we're gonna eat
Right.
matzah. We're gonna go to Shana. So somehow they always had this pride. It was dormant.
So
It
they
was
still have
embers.
interesting. So even though they didn't have the education, you mean the culture still stayed in terms of the foods that they ate?
So Jews in Russia, for the most part, in the hardest of times, food was always what the Jewish kitchen, as they called it, existed,
Mm.
and to this day it's passed on. And my Bobby's recipe. Again, I can't pinpoint. I just think these when you're given a challenge, you're given the inner strength to deal. So finally, they're neshamas for the first time. I mean, a neshama, the soul, is equal in every person. A rabbi, a non-rabbi, someone who's observant. Now we all have the same holy soul within us. It just that it's dormant. There's still the embers there, and once it felt like it was being fed, it was given a little bit of what it wanted, and had this huge desire to do something big for God, something for the Jewish people. And I went, and they followed suit. These boys that did back then, bris and circumcised, they got circumcised. They today are rabbis. They today are leading communities. Not all of them, but some of them, and all over the world.
Incredible.
Why? Because they went to camp 25 years ago. So they impact, and we know
Wow.
and the whole concept of camp was the Rebbe told us that camp has the biggest impact on kids. School, Jewish education is vital, especially today when with anti-Semitism in the world, you need to give your kids a Jewish education. It will pay off years to come. That being said, the impact a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week camp has on a child in some ways is stronger and more impactful than a full year in a Jewish school, because the Rebbe, they're 24 hours in the camp site and the campgrounds where you're able to give them all the Jewish traditions and connect with them on levels that you don't connect with in just regular formal education. So camp was
Right.
incredible, and it had a great impact on me, on the kids.
Wow. Wow. I know. I mean, my mother was born in Russia. She escaped from Russia right after the war with her family,
Where
and
was she
I
born?
know
Where in
she was
Russia?
born in Kiev.
Okay.
But she. I mean, they traveled throughout the war to so many places. You mentioned Tashkent. She was in Tashkent. She was in so many different parts, of Russia. But I know when my daughters wanted to go to help in a camp, similar, probably maybe even the same camp that you founded after seminary, my mother was very nervous about it, about them going back because she had such memories of Russia. So I'm wondering, like, here you took the move of, you're a Canadian-born boy, and you took the move to Russia. Were you scared when you moved there? Was it a frightening thing for you, for your wife, for your families?
So my wife also came here to run a camp before we were married once or twice, and her grandmother was born in Russia, or today it's Ukraine. She was very much against it. She for her,
Mhm.
Russia was what she remembered. She escaped from it, and the thought
Exactly,
of her
exactly.
granddaughter going back to the place that she escaped from, the place that had so much turmoil, anti-Semitism, didn't make any sense. So when I moved there already, when we moved there, we knew where we were going because we were here for many times in the
Mhm,
summers and camps and visiting. So there wasn't really fear. On the contrary, we felt the great privilege and opportunity to
mhm.
go and to serve at a place that you really needed.
I think that's beautiful that your wife's grandmother was escaping from there, and that now your own wife is there in the same place, bringing Yiddishkeit to it. How the circle turns, and that's gorgeous. That's really
You
beautiful.
know, we've had the privilege of one of the local boys here in Rostov. So he finished studying in Europe. He went to study in Europe. He came back, and then he was working for a company here. And then at one point, I came up to him and I told him, "Listen, you have a business. You're doing this, but we really need a community. Could you help us run the youth club?" And he said, "Okay." He quit his job, a well-paying job, came to our community, helped with our youth club. He
Mhm,
did a tremendous job. Then he got married to a girl also from, he studied with her in Vienna. She was from Dnieper. They came here, they lived here, they helped our community. And at some point, and they became obviously Shomer Torah mitzvahs, they gave Torah, mitzvah, Shabbos, everything. And at one point, we realized, it's time to move on. They've pretty much done everything they could do here. They moved to Toronto. And when
mhm.
you think about a circle, now in
Right.
Toronto, he's gathering young professionals as part of the JRC there, helping
Wow.
other
Wow.
people come back to the fold. So it's kind of like this cycle that the Rebbe established where, one leaves Toronto, you send another one to Toronto, and
Right.
everyone in every place is doing what's needed to help bring Jews back to the fold, to help them materially, spiritually. So it's really, yeah, it really is fascinating.
And
Um,
the very place that your grandmother escaped from, she's there. She's there.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
at first she was, I think when she first came, she was unhappy, but then she saw what she was doing in camp. And I think she also got inspired saying like, and that, at the end of the day, what I feel is so my great grandparents escaped from this part of the world. That was before the revolution. So it's probably
Mhm,
the early 20th century. Um, what to me always, is something I thought of a lot is what's the difference between the local Jews that are here today and us? We have parents or grandparents or great grandparents that escaped. The difference is that when pogroms came to our villages, to our shtetls. Some families had the know-how and had the understanding that we have to drop everything and leave. They had the understanding how to do it. They picked up, they dropped everything they had, they left, and they started life anew. Why? So that their kids and grandkids could have a better future. Other
Right.
families, for some reason, they didn't know how. It was too scary. Like today, I see my traveling back here 39 hours by air was a log schlep. I'm imagining back in the day when you have no language and it's not 39 hours, it's weeks of traveling to a country you don't know, you don't speak the language. So they stayed, and that's a whole difference. So our great grandparents gave us a better future by coming to a land where we were brought up with all the freedoms of a Jewish community and the infrastructure that's necessary. And the other families stayed here. So I feel for us, it's a great privilege to be able to help those families that when the going
Right.
got hard, they stayed, and we're here to help them find their way back and to look out for them, tell they're not alone.
Interesting. It's interesting because when my grandfather escaped with his family, he said, "I'm leaving not for my children because I know my children will keep Yiddishkeit. They will keep Judaism because they grew up with such self-sacrifice for Judaism. But what will happen to my children's children? That I don't know,
Wow,
you know, and,
wow,
yeah.
wow.
So that's
So
yeah, and it was a scary thing to leave at that time. I mean, it wasn't like getting on a plane then. It was scary. You risked your life
yeah,
by leaving, by
and not only that, many
escaping.
many many of the people had, they led, back then before the revolution, they were wealthy. They had my great grandparents had farms, they had money. But one time
Right. Absolutely.
the Cossacks came
100%.
one time and they said, you know what, wealth and what richness is better than life itself, than giving our kids
Right.
some future. And they just dropped it all and left. And they suffered. It was not. They moved to Montreal. My grandmother was when she was born. They had no money. It was a difficult time. But the next generation, thank God, had a better life,
Right.
easier life.
Right, 100%. So, and you mentioned matzah, that's a food. I remember my mother's stories from my childhood was like going for miles on end as a child to the mill to get the matzah, the flour for the matzah, because as a child she could do it, and the elders could not because you know, they would be suspect by the authorities.
So
So,
matzah was that's something that to me is just incredible, because an American Jew might not come to any synagogue service or any holiday. Once a year, he knows is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is my one day a year. That's my Jewish day. I come to synagogue. Others is Rosh Hashanah. In Russia, it's all about Pesach. Pesach,
wow,
I bring in 3.5 tons of matzah. Jews that you don't
wow,
see them ever throughout the year, they come to shul, they look in the calendar when Pesach is, and they stand in line. Why? Because their parents did that, their grandparents. Once a year
mm,
we go to synagogue. Back and then it worked differently. You'd actually bring flour to the synagogue. In our shul here,
yeah,
it's a 150-year-old synagogue. They bring flour, they weigh it, then they say come back in a week. And based on how much flour you gave, that's how much matzah you got back. They'd actually make it in our shul.
wow,
They'd come back, they'd take it home, and they'd sit around the Seder. They didn't know what it meant to be free because they weren't free. They didn't know much
right,
about the traditions about our ancestors leaving, but they sat around the table with tremendous joy that this is Pesach. It's the holiday we're supposed to eat matzah. We're still Jewish. We remember this tradition, and we're doing the best we can in very difficult circumstances. So to me, that's
wow.
like inspiring to this day.
Incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, tell us a little about like when my mother tells me about stories of her life, it seems like it was a different world, like literally a different world. I mean, the matzah they used to hang from the ceiling, because they made it in advance in the home and they had to cover it so no one would see it. It was just a different kind of world that they were in. Tell us a little about, in a sense, you're living in a different world. Russia is different than America, than North America. What were some of the inconveniences that you felt when you came there? You said at the beginning your wife did not enjoy it. Like what
So
were some hardships?
I wouldn't say she didn't enjoy it. I say it comes with a lot of challenges. So one
Mhm.
thing that we as shluchim, um, some people don't notice. We make a decision to come somewhere, but our kids, they don't make
Mm.
that decision. They come along, whether they weren't born at the time yet or they're very young, and they then are brought up in a community or in an environment that's different from what the typical Jewish community is like in the States. So we have no kosher store, we have no nash, we have no
Mhm.
regular friends, so to speak. I have a school that we cater to local kids. It's a regular school that teaches some Jewish studies, but they're getting a full secular education. So my kids, for example, they learn in online school, which is common, shluchim all over the world. When you live in a
So
community
they
like this,
learn on the online shluchim school, which means
correct.
that they learn online on a computer with other children around the world that are also on shluchas?
Yeah, that's exactly what they do. But
Yeah.
there's one difference in us and most other shluchim, is because the time difference. My kids start class at 5 p.m. and they end at midnight.
Oh wow. Oh
Because there is
wow.
no because all the other shluchim in this part of the world are mostly Hebrew speaking. So they have a Hebrew
Mm.
school, like the online school in Hebrew is at the hours that are convenient here, so 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. But because my kids are more American, they're English speakers, they start according to the American schedule, 9 a.m. The time difference is 5 p.m. So it's a huge hassle to begin studying at 5 p.m. till midnight.
Yeah.
It breaks up the whole, schedule, family dynamic. And after you've done classes, you want to speak to your friends. So that's 1 a.m. So you have to decide like what. So it's a bit of a crazy schedule. So that's one thing that's difficult. The challenges are just, it's a different,
That
not
must be
having.
crazy. That must be crazy. Like that way that so what time do they wake up? Like 12?
So yeah, they sleep in until 10, 11, 12, depending
Right.
on
Wow.
the season and the time. Sometimes it's an hour later because they
Right.
change the clocks. Here the clock doesn't change. So that's one of the bigger challenges we have. That's why we
Mhm.
we try it to the best of our ability when there's camp. So now in January I'm going to take my daughter to Florida. There's a shluchim winter
Mm.
camp. It's important for her
Mm.
to see her classmates in person. So each winter
100%.
we go there. It's a long schlep. It's difficult, but that's the least we could do to give our kids a little bit of a normal class experience. Friends, they do that then. They do that in the summer. So that's one thing that's a little bit. Food, obviously, we schlep. I brought back now 2 suitcases. They're full to the with food. I brought back cheese.
What did you bring? Cheese.
So my kids are very American and like they're not eating borscht here. I love borscht. I'm a big
Mhm.
borscht fan.
Right.
And not so much the farschmuck, but the borscht I like. So
Right.
so that's something that already they don't eat. They want to eat what? They want pasta. They want pizza. They want cheese. So
Of
and
course.
so there is, thank God, today there is food that's available here. Cheese from us because they don't like this cheese. They're used to the cheese that we
Yeah.
have. So I select about blocks of cheese. I freeze them, put them in a suitcase, bring them back. Nash, I
Wow.
bring back whole wheat bread. And my wife has some bread she likes. I bring back whole wheat bread. So by the border, when you go through, they're always like looking, you actually scan all the suitcases and they're looking for contraband, for some stuff that's illegal. What they see, so they see the blocks of cheese, raise suspicion. It looks like some explosive
Uh,
blocks, these big, I get these
right.
big, what are they,
Right.
5 pound
Frozen,
blocks.
sure.
Exactly. So you have to open them, you show them. But so that's some of the stuff we brought back a lot of Hanukkah stuff for Hanukkah, some different crafts and things for the kids. So we schlep in a lot of stuff like that, books for classes, whatever we need. But we get used to it. That's the little stuff, which really,
Mm.
when you see the privilege of living around Jews in this part of the world. For my family and I, it's especially meaningful, the relationship we have with the older generation. That's people that are Holocaust survivors, people that are in their 90s, people that very much rely on us and on the community for their well-being. So we have like a Meals on Wheels program that delivers food every day to their house. We have medicine programs that bring them medicine. We have just coming to give them company. So seeing these Jews and hearing their stories for us is just so inspiring. So
Mm.
it just gives us meaning and gives us understanding how lucky we are today to live in times where everything's accessible, where we're able to live outwardly Jewish. Like they just look in shock that we're coming to synagogue today. There's one elderly woman, she's since passed a few years ago. She spoke Yiddish. She was a survivor. She'd come to shul every time she was, those young and she spoke. She'd just start crying. She's like, you can't imagine what it means to me that we're all sitting here together in our historic synagogue, 150-year-old synagogue, and we're able
Mm.
to openly celebrate Sukkot, Pesach, Hanukkah, Purim. You don't understand what an open modern day miracle this is, and we don't understand it. For
Wow.
us, we don't. But
Right.
she remembers why, because she knows when she was young, she would dare come. She said she used to walk her parents or grandparents to the synagogue. She wouldn't dare go in. She was a student. If she went in, she'd be
Mm.
written off as going, then she'd be dismissed from her classes. She used to just
Mm.
walk into the synagogue and come back 3 hours later to pick them up. And today, the fact that youngsters could go for her was like, wow, it's just incredible. So these are the things that give us meaning, and hearing their stories and being able to, in many cases, share them. I try, I several years ago when COVID hit, so it was a very difficult time because most all of our funding pretty much comes from overseas. I do a lot of
Mm.
traveling that I couldn't travel, so I just started sharing. I said, "Well, I'm stuck here and I can't leave. Let me share a little bit of what inspires us." And if something happened that day that was inspiring, I met someone that was meaningful, I shared it online, and somehow it caught fire. And like different stories I shared, got hundreds of thousands of views, sometimes millions. And it just, people
Wow.
were inspired from it. And I realized now over the past couple of years that, social media has become a means to share positivity, to share a message that the Jewish people need to hear today. So today, that's one of the things that for me is important. When I meet a Jew that has something meaningful to share, many of them, they're lonely people, no family, no relatives. And I'm able to take a story that would be forgotten forever and pass it on and share it with an audience that it inspired. And I show it to them, and they're just so moved that something from their life is meaningful to someone else. I recently shared a story on Sukkot. I was visiting a woman, a 90-year-old woman. It was her birthday. And she did the Lulav and Esther with so much joy. She said, I want to share with you a story. And I said, what? And she still lives in the house she was born in 90 years ago. So it's an old house.
Mm-hmm.
And she's on the 5th floor. She goes to the porch, and she tells me when she was a little girl, before the war, she remembers there was a neighbor called Altman. And he, every year, as the summer ended, when fall hit and it got cold, he would build a little shed outside. And as he built it, he would sing songs. We didn't know what these songs were, but we were kids, and we saw this man singing songs. We'd laugh and we'd dance around his shed, and he would sing. And he said, then the war hit, and he passed on. And only later when the 90s, so when she was 7 years old, and she came to synagogue and she saw this shed being built. It was sukkahs. She realized this was a Jewish person.
What
she knew
was
he was Jewish, and he was building a sukkah every year in the fall, and he'd go out there in the cold all alone, singing songs, building it. She had no clue what it was. And she said, after so many years, you're coming to my house with a lulav and an esrog, and we're making a blessing on the 4 species. This house, once again, sukkahs has come back to Altman's house. So you see these stories and what they lived through, and suddenly they're coming back now at this stage. Is just, for us, it's remarkable. It's very meaningful.
It's like seeing the Jewish soul, like just unveiled, just seeing it in its raw form, just out there.
Exactly. It's and you know what? I often think when you see the joy that some of the Jews here have, why some all they do a mitzvah with joy. We do mitzvahs and we're just like, okay, it's Hanukkah, let's light the candles, let's move on. It's Shabbos candles, put on tefillin. And then you see when they're doing a mitzvah and their eyes light up and they have a smile from ear to ear, and they do it slowly and they think about what they're doing. And I think as a rabbi, that's incredible. That's how the mitzvah should be done. We get too just used to doing things. Why? Because it's a routine or what? Here, there's no routine. There was no routine. For 70 years, you weren't allowed to do it. So when they're doing it, they're and they know the history. The Nazis occupied Rostov twice. And in the second occupation in 1942, they put up signs all over the city. And it said the Jews were to gather on August 11th at 8 a.m. And it said 5 gathering points. It said to protect you from the Soviet population, you must come with your valuables so that we could protect you, offer you protection. And it said the address, and every Jew from the city came to these 5 locations from where they were never seen again. They were driven to the outskirts of town, now it's still part of town, to a place called Snakes Valley, Zmiorskaya Balka, and they were shot dead, 27,000 Jews.
Wow.
And that's what it meant being a Jew. In 1942, the entire city was decimated. Every single Jew was gunned down on the outskirts of town. So when Jews came back, they just knew that, like, this is every Jew was killed. No one was left. Those that could evacuate. Those that didn't evacuate couldn't. But what to me was astonishing, recently we found old calendars, Jewish calendars that were handwritten. So today, a Jewish calendar, every Chabad house, every synagogue, every community has a calendar. You get it once a year. You know when the holidays are. But in 1945, after the war, there was no Jewish calendar being printed. So the Jews that came back to town painstakingly sat down and they wrote down the calendar by hand, calculating when the holidays are, when the Rosh Chodesh, the new month is, what day, what blessing needs to be made. And they wrote it by hand. And I found them recently in the attic of our old synagogue.
Wow.
And you see these little, they're this size. Yeah.
How were they writing it? Because they didn't have the education, you said.
This is the elderly, the Jews. This is 1945, so they're probably 80 years old. These were Jews that went through Cheder. They went through the Jewish school system and a shtetl back in the day. And today they're writing. And to me, what was most fascinating about this is, think about this. Every single Jew was killed by the Nazis a few years ago. The war just ended. What probably should have happened, Jews come back, they hide any outwardly sign of being Jewish. Right. And you say being Jewish is associated with danger, with being shot down, being killed. Let's leave this way. But no, they got back and they already want to celebrate the upcoming holidays. And they're writing down the calculation. When is Rosh Hashanah? When is Yom Kippur? And this is the story of our people. It's the story of our people.
Right.
Have we had hard times? We've had terribly difficult times. Today's hard times, a little bit different. But anti-Semitism today is at levels that it hasn't been in so many years. And you have two different schools of thought. One school of thought is, okay, let's take off our kippah. Let's hide our outwardly Jewish appearance because it's just too dangerous. And then you have the school of thought that the Rabbi taught us that no, when there's difficulty, when there's darkness, you add more light. You do more. And you know what? I see recently now in the past year that it seems like the Rebbe's message has gotten to the wider public, that people today do realize that yes, we have to embrace Judaism today more than ever, even though there might be some dangers associated with outwardly Jewish appearance. But the message of us now hiding our Judaism is the wrong message. And I see it here, people that wouldn't come to synagogue or wouldn't be engaged in Jewish life for so many years, even after communism. Why? It was far. They didn't connect. Something over the past year, they're feeling we have to do it. We're gonna come. We're gonna, Am Yisrael Chai. We gotta rap. We gotta learn. We gotta study. We're gonna put on a kippah now, and it's beautiful. It's all over the world,
Amazing.
and here especially we feel it.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah, I just was reading that someone was writing that in Harvard they took down 50. The hooligans took down 50 mezuzahs. So Chabad came and they put up not 50 but 100 mezuzahs.
Exactly,
on the doors.
exactly. That's
what we got to
exactly
do.
the message, and
Right.
and you see it all over the world today, and that gives a lot of strength, a lot of chizuk, that we're living going on. It's changed.
Are you finding a lot of more anti-Semitism in Russia? What's the situation as far as anti-Semitism? Is there fear?
So I'll tell you like this. Thank God the government has been loyal to the Jews. That means, as rabbis, we're not into politics. We're looking out for the Jews that live in our communities and doing our best to take care of their, material and spiritual well-being. Overall in Russia, I think everything is dictated by government. If the government is supportive of the Jewish community, then the Jews are protected. So for the most part, I could say in the 16 years that I've lived here, I've experienced very little anti-Semitism. And nothing comes to mind other than, someone that was drunk and said something, but that could happen anywhere. I feel overall, as a Jew, I feel safer walking the streets here with an outwardly Jewish appearance than many cities in Europe. So I don't feel anti-Semitism. And, online you could see some stuff, and I feel like online you see it everywhere. All the biggest cowards in the world, what they do, they sit behind their computers and just type anti-Semitism and horrific comments or whatever. But overall, I feel that, we're able to practice Judaism outwardly, not worry about incidents. There's no one thing that is a big relief is there's no protests. No anti-Israel protests, which is something the government doesn't allow, and therefore there's no, instances where you have to worry. I'm walking here, you see what's going on in Toronto and Canada. That's been
Sure.
And it's funny to believe that we're here. And I just said this recently when my mother was, complaining about what's going on there in Toronto. And I'm thinking, like, who would have thought that we from Russia would be worried about what's going on in the streets of Toronto or Montreal, and you wouldn't be worrying about us here in Russia or Rostov. So anti-Semitism, overall, I feel like the government does a good job. If there is something that comes up, we complain and they take care of it. So I don't think there's ever been a time that there was this level of in the past 20, 30 years that we're able to, we've been, so to speak, under good watchful guard of authorities to ensure that the Jewish community is safe. So thank God that's been the case that we're experiencing.
Right. So you spoke about, some of the older people in the community and their feelings their warmth towards Judaism, their soul just coming out because they couldn't. But it sounds like it's even the youth in your community. I know you work a lot with the camps, and you've also started a special camp for special needs children. Tell us a little about the reactions of the children there and why you feel that they're so connected more than, let's say, the average teenage kid would be in America.
So, camp. So when we got here, naturally speaking, because camp was the reason that we moved here, that's one of the projects we started right away, our overnight camp. It started small. Thank God in recent years, we've moved kind of to the mountain 7 hours away. and it's grown.
Oh, wow.
Now we have about close to 500 kids in our different 450 kids, 500 kids in our different camp sessions. Recently, we started a new camp which is for special needs children.
How often is the camps? When is the camps in this?
So we do this is the summer camp is our main camp, but actually right now next week we're having like a winter retreat. It's kind of like a winter camp, a Shabbaton that we're doing just an extra hours for 100 kids. So we're always engaging with them. And I have an interesting story to share about that. But basically, so camps are a means for the kids because many children live in towns and villages with little or no infrastructure. So you could have kids that live in a city that have no rabbi, no synagogue, no community, smaller towns and villages. So we gather them. We have, cars, buses that go, finds them, brings them to us. Then we have our own kids. They come to camp. And in camp, what do we give this past year? The camp title. What was the theme of camp was Am Yisrael Chai. That's it. The Jewish people are alive, and everything about camp was singing that, flags with that, trips with that, giving them Jewish pride. Jews today, all they need to be proud of who they are. Here, thank God, they are proud. You just need to light the match, and it just burns. So we had an exceptional summer this year because in our camp, for the very first time, we had one of our alumni who wanted to get married in camp. We had a real chuppah in camp. She's a girl that grew up in our camp. After she finished our camp, what I pride myself in, that 80% of our staff are kids that finished camp. They came back as staff. So she came back as staff. And then she met a young Jewish boy a few months before camp. And then she came to me and she's like, I'd like to get married in camp. And I told her, let's do it. And now it's a lot of details. How do you make a wedding reception in the mountains in a place that has nothing? We got a tent. We set it up. We built a chuppah. And we had the first ever. And I said, this is the best experience you can give children. Instead of just teaching them theory, we're showing them, assimilation rates in Russia are terribly high, over 90%. Which means out of 100 families, 90 families are intermarried. The best experience you can give a kid, the best example is leading by example. So something we did a chuppah, and they were involved. They decorated. They got dressed. So they had a chuppah. What else was interesting is in our camps, we had a bat mitzvah for 13 girls, if I'm not mistaken, this year. We had a bar mitzvahs, and we had a bris. The mohel came. Some kids wanted to do a counselor, wanted to do a bris, and a child, we did a bris. So we had all the life cycles and girls choosing Jewish names in our camp. So it's something that really gives them tremendous pride and Jewish identity. Aside from
they live through it. They're not just learning about it.
Exactly. And once they go through something like this, they remember for life. We're Jewish. We're proud. And they come back year after year. But what we started recently was our special needs camp. That was something that we found that during Corona, we realized that I was surprised. I never saw like Down syndrome kids in the street. I never saw, kids in wheelchairs. And I always wondered, in the States or Canada. So here, it wasn't so socially accepted to be parading around the city with your special child. So during COVID, I came across many kids. We were coming home visiting people, and we saw, here's a family that has someone here. And I invited them to our camp, and they all refused. They said, we can't go. And I couldn't understand why. And then they said, it's not going to be comfortable for us to be in a regular camp. We're going to get, people are going to look at us. We're not going to be. So I said, how about I make you a separate session for a few days? They said, for that, we'll come. And we did our first kind of a test run. It's a few years ago, 4 years ago. And they came and they loved it. And the next year we did for a week. And now we're doing a 10-day already camp that they're coming from all over Russia. Kids from Siberia, mothers are calling us because there's never had, in the States, you have 10 special needs camps for children, for Jewish children. Here, there's nothing. They came and this one lady calls from Siberia and she says, we heard you have a camp for special children.
How far is Siberia?
So Siberia is 4,000 kilometers or miles actually, so it's very far. So when I told her, we would love to have you, she said okay. And then the next day she called and she said, well, actually it turns out that the flights, we need to take 2 flights, it's more than my monthly salary, I can't do it, but thank you for offering, it means the world. I was about to hang up and my wife heard it and she's like, what do you mean? Let's offer to pay the ticket. And I said okay. So I said, would it help if we paid the ticket? She said, are you serious? I said yes. We got them tickets, they traveled, and it changed their life. They just came and they for the first time felt they're in a safe environment, an environment that cares for them, people that could relate to the challenges that they deal with. And it's grown since then. Now it's opening centers in different cities where we teach. We have our centers open every day. And it's beyond just social help. It's actually giving them therapies, doctors, psychologists, because they're underserved. They need to get, the attention they need. So today a big focus is on that. And I feel in life, there are different situations we come across, and it's kind of God sending us a message. You see someone else's plight, someone else's challenge, and you're wondering, I could just ignore it. and move on. It's not my, deal to deal with this, or I could do something about it. And I felt that's what happened with the special needs, where once I
Mm.
saw these kids, we could have just said that, oh, we feel bad. Let's help them, give them some food and move on. But I just felt like Hashem was giving us a little bit of an indicator, like there is a need. Are you willing to step up? And we said, let's do it. And it just given so many blessings to so many people and to us, just seeing the feedback and their gratitude. And I had one more story like this, actually, that's in the middle of being played out now. One of the ladies I visited her at home to bring medicine exactly a day before I went to the Kines. So it was exactly a week ago. And while I was there, I mentioned we're having a big Hanukkah concert. This year we're making a musical. She wrote a whole, kind of like a Broadway, actually. We wanted to do something that would be meaningful. So we wrote out a whole play. We got local actors and music, and we're going to do something very special. And I was thinking, this old lady who's alone, she's elderly woman, no family. Why don't we invite her? I told her, would you be willing to come? She told me, I don't leave my apartment. I live on the fifth floor. I can't go down. I was like, but she's like, I love music. And I'm thinking to myself, what can we do to help? Again, so it's another time where Hashem has given us a little sign. There's someone here that loves
Mm.
music. She can't come. She can't leave her apartment. What can we do? So suddenly a thought entered my mind. I was like, how about if we make a concert for you in your house? She's like, what do you mean?
Wow.
I said, we'll bring musicians here and we'll make a concert, a Hanukkah concert. One day we're going to have a big Hanukkah concert for everyone. And one day we're going to come here with some musicians to make you a little Hanukkah. She's like, you could do that? I said, yes. And that's what we're doing now. This year on the second day of Hanukkah, on the 26th of December, we're going to have two different Hanukkah bands that are going to go around to the homes of the elderly that cannot leave their homebound and raise their spirits. Why? Because they deserve it. They're alone. They have no family. Give them a little bit of warmth, of joy on Hanukkah. So we're constantly, and again, you don't live in Russia for this. Anywhere you're in the world, and you see something, you see someone needing. Not always does it require finances or money. It could just be some words, some attention, a hug, a kiss. You look, and you could just move on and say, I'm too busy today, or you could say, hey, let me do something to help these people. And I feel our job is to, as many times as possible, stop and do, what God expects us to do.
So I'm looking at you, and I'm seeing this rabbi in cold Russia, with a lot of older people there, younger people who have not had much, to do with Judaism, and you're so on fire. What keeps you so full of fire, full of inspiration that you go from one thing to the next? From what you see something that's at need here, you go and do it. You see something at need there, you go and do it. What keeps you going? And what inspires you personally that makes you so literally on fire, wanting to do more and more for your community?
There's a concept in Judaism that a mitzvah brings about a person to do another mitzvah. That mitzvah goreret mitzvah. I mean, you do something good, and it's going to cause you to do another thing good. It brings about another good deed. And I feel when we when you impact someone else, there's no, I've met people that are very wealthy, very successful, but they're empty inside because it's not money or success that gives a person meaning. The biggest meaning you can get in life is by helping another person in any aspect of life, that they had a problem and you found the time for them and you just gave them some attention. You gave them some advice. It doesn't cost anything. You changed their life and it costs you 15 minutes of your time, a half an hour. So I just, a lot of what really drew me to this shluchas, this mission here, is that a lot of what we do is humanitarian based. And what's humanitarian? It means helping people with food, with medicine, just attention, so they shouldn't be lonely. These are things that could be done everywhere in the world. And you don't need to be a full-time, rabbi. I was sharing with people today on my way back. I made a little video to share, and I was saying that, everyone is a shliach. Every Jew is an emissary of God with a mission that they must fulfill. And if you don't fulfill your mission, there's no one else out there in the world that could fulfill that mission. So when you're given the opportunity to do something and you didn't do it, you passed on it, no one else could do it. And that's going to always, that void is going to be there forever. So I feel for me, for us, for my family, what's inspiration? You do something and you see the impact. You see how much it meant to someone else. How could you not want to do it again? How could you not want to do something more? How could you not want to expand on that? And you see other people that you impacted, and now they're impacting other people. They're lighting their own candle. They're spreading warmth and light further. So I just taking a break from thinking about yourself and think about others. And when you do that, you'll often find that the blessings and the fulfillment you'll get from that half an hour a day or half an hour a week that you gave to other people is worth more than everything else you're doing. And if you do that, you'll want to do it more. You'll want to do it again. That's what the Rabbi taught us. The Rabbi taught us that we have to be there. We have to go search for every Jew to do what we can to help them. And
Mm.
the message was that often the Rabbi spoke about helping materially before you even help spiritually. Before you go teach
Mhm.
them about Torah, first help them. Make sure they have the basic needs. Make sure they're cared for. You do that, there's no better feeling in the world. So here we do that at many hours of the day, and it gives us tremendous fulfillment and tremendous feeling of accomplishment that we're where we're meant to be, doing what we want to do, what we're meant to be doing. Every person, and never think, by the way, sometimes you think you look at someone else, oh, people say, "Hi, it's amazing what you're." No, you could. Everything we're doing here could be done in Brooklyn, New York.
Mhm.
Everything word is done in Brooklyn by many people, but I just mean,
Mhm.
don't say like, oh, there's needy people there. Let's say there's needy people everywhere in the world. You are where you're meant to be. And I want to say one story that really gave me that message that a person is where he's meant to be. Every year we said we're going to do a winter camp, and every year we cancel because financially it's difficult. Winter camp is
Mhm.
an extra added financial burden, and we didn't have the funds. So every year in camp, I tell the kids we're doing winter camp, and everyone's excited. Comes winter, we didn't do it. 2 years
Mhm.
ago, when the war broke out and things were difficult, I said, you know what, we got it. My wife said, actually, we got to do winter camp this year. So because we're in southern Russia, it's not so cold, or it's not as cold or snowy as many places in Canada. So I said, let's find a place that has snow so we could give the real winter experience. So we found a place 9 hours away. I could say what it is, but we won't be able to pronounce it. Karachaycherkevsk is the name of that
Okay.
area. Don't try pronouncing it. And we rented this beautiful campsite in the winter, December, and we're going to take the kids to this winter wonderland with ice, snow, mountains. Anyway, it was 3 times more expensive than doing it locally, but it would give them the real. They needed it. We went there with 150 kids. We arrived there, and to my dismay, there was no snow. You travel 9 hours, paying
Wow.
twice or 3 times more. There's no snow, and I was so disappointed. But I said, okay, it's not in our hands. There's snow in the mountains. We went to the mountains, but the campsite there was no snow. But what was interesting was, in middle of Shabbos, the owner of the camp, this is the Muslim part of Russia. The owner of the campsite comes to me, and he says, Rabbi, this is the first time I see Jews. He's a 77-year-old man. I've never seen Jews before. It's the first time Jews have come here, especially to my campsite. I have one request. And I think, what could he ask? What's the request? He says, during the war, there was a group of Jewish children that were taken just up the hill from here, and they were killed by the Nazis.
Mhm.
My request of you is, would you be willing to go there to make a prayer for these kids? I said,
Wow.
okay. I said, okay, after Shabbat, tonight we'll discuss it. And I was saying, what's he talking about Nazis? We're like all the way to the east, the mountains. This is a place so far from any war. What is he? I thought he was just saying stuff. After Shabbos, I Googled the name of this village, Tiberda, and I wrote Holocaust, and the Yad Vashem website shows up. And it says this
Mhm.
following story. There was an orphanage, a Jewish orphanage in Leningrad, St. Petersburg of today, that was they realized around Leningrad for a long time there was the blockade, and it was only a matter of time till the Nazis would get into the city and they'd kill every Jew. So this Jewish orphanage found a safe corridor to escape from Leningrad and to go to
Mhm.
safety. So they escaped. They came down into the Kavkaz areas, which is where we were, and they realized it wasn't safe enough. They went even further, and they showed up to this area where our campsite is, and they thought they were safe. The local Muslim population said, help these kids, and they brought them in their homes. Each family took one such child, an orphan child, to their house to make as if they're their own children. So when if the Nazis come, they wouldn't be able to take them away. But there was a group of
Mhm.
children that were left all alone. The Nazis heard there
Mhm.
were children there. They traveled all the way to this remote village in the middle of the mountains. They found these children. They went up the hill and they shot them dead. The story played
Wow.
out. So that night I called the guy when I confirmed this at midnight. I asked him, where's Dad? Showed me in the morning. He said, in the morning, 7 a.m., I'll show you. I went with him up the hill the next morning. And sure enough, I saw a little memorial. It's a very small little memorial written by hand, some marker or something. And the date of the mass killing of these children was 80 years to the day of
Oh
our
my gosh.
camp.
Wow.
1942, December 13th. December 13th,
Wow.
1942, Jewish orphan children were killed here. And now 80 years later, we're here with a group of almost 150 kids. to do a Shabbaton, that's when I realized nothing is by chance. A person is where he's meant to be. We were here not for the winter wonderland, not for snow, ice. We came here to
Mm.
be able to pray for children that were killed for the sole reason of them being Jewish. Orphan children, no less. I schlepped all the kids up the hill. And we went standing
Wow.
there. I told them the story. And they started crying. And every kid said, I'm going to do a myth. I want to do, what can I do for these kids? And I said, they die for being Jewish. You people have to live Jewish instead of what these kids would have done. You have to do. And they all took mitzvahs. And so it's incredible. So the message that it gave me is sometimes you think you're in the wrong place. You think you're not meant to be there. We are where we're meant to be.
Mm.
God sends us where we're meant to be, where we're working, the families we're in, the cities we live in. We're meant to be where we are today. And instead of looking at the other side of the grass saying it's greener there or there, let's find meaning. Let's find fulfillment. Let's fulfill our mission in the place we are. That's what a shliach is meant to do. And we're all shluchim. We're all out, especially today. Since October 7th, last year at the Kiddush, someone asked me how many shluchim there are. I said there's 15 million shluchim. Today in the
Mm.
world, every single Jew is a shliach, is an emissary. There's not one Jew whose mission is not absolutely vital to the Jewish people. And what that means is the spiritual mission, the material mission, the online advocating for Jewish causes, helping other Jews that are scared, helping raise Jewish pride, helping other Jews do mitzvahs. That's all our shluchas that we have today. And every one of us has a part in it. And we have to just embrace it. We have to do it. If we don't do it, no one else will.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful, and that really shows you where you're supposed to be. And I'm sure your wife and you know, really feel that what you're doing there is so meaningful. What about your children? How do they feel about what you're doing, and how do you involve them in your shlichus so that they shouldn't feel deprived or like so different than their peers their age in
So,
America?
so we found that giving our kids a daily allowance helps. So we give them like $100 a day, and we just bribe them in the morning. And no, I'm joking. So the truth is, I'll tell you the truth. The truth is, it is for them. It is a sacrifice for us because we feel that we from always, and you think for them, not having friends or family nearby, or not having access to the
Mhm.
ice cream store, the whatever it is in Crown Heights, the kosher,
Pizza
what's it? No,
shops?
no, pizza shops is a big miss, but the candy store right there in Union and Kingston.
Oh, sure.
Sweet expressions,
Sweet
so not having
expressions.
sweet expressions is a big loss for them. That being said, as they grow up and as they realize their part in the shlichus, in our mission, and we involve them. It's so important to involve them both for their benefit and for the benefit of the community. We're old people. We're aging.
How old are your children?
So my oldest is 18. My oldest is
Mhm.
18, and actually we're thrilled. He's thrilled. We're thrilled for the first time. He's coming back for Hanukkah with 8 classmates. They're
Oh, wow.
traveling now with all the difficult. We're right by the border. We haven't had guests. The community needs, a lot of support. Him and his friends, they decided they're going to come. They're willing to come help us for Hanukkah. But flying, it's difficult. It's expensive. They said they're going to fundraise. They're going to bring a
Mm,
lot of support. And they've been doing that. And they're coming actually from Toronto. They're leaving Toronto. They're going to
mm.
come schlep all the way here to help the community. So the oldest is 18. Our second son is 16. His birthday was yesterday. All donations could be made in his honor to Rostov or to Chabad.org. I'm joking.
Great.
And then I have a daughter is 13 and a son who's 11. So
Mm,
2 of them are now studying in the States already, in
mhm,
Canada and the States. My daughter is leaving after this school year to go also study in the States. So honestly, the biggest challenge of our shlichus, and I think my wife would say this even more than me, is having to send your kids off to study far away.
sure,
It's one
for
thing if you're
sure.
living in New York and you send them to Montreal, to Toronto, it's an hour flight away. It's another thing when it's 30, 40 hours of travel and you're not going to see them, more than a couple of times. They obviously make efforts to come more often, but the fact that they're leaving the house is a big, big challenge for us.
Mm,
For our kids themselves, they feel a very big part of our shlichus. We take them along. When we're going to visit the elderly people, they're with us. They bring the most joy to those people
mm,
because they have no grandchildren, they have no children. They see these little kids that are raising their spirits. They're helping with their kids. They're helping in camp, so they feel very much part of it. They're so proud of having been brought up. That's for me is I think our biggest achievement, so to say, is that
mm,
our kids, when they're brought up on shlichus, it could go either way. They could either be, bitter about having
mm,
not had a regular traditional religious
Childhood.
upbringing, childhood,
Mm-hmm.
or they could appreciate what you and your family is doing for the
Mm-hmm.
Jews in the city you live in. Thank God we've been blessed with the second option, that they feel the importance of our work as a family. They feel a big part of it. The fact they're coming back to participate in Hanukkah is the biggest testament. If they grew up and they had a bitter feeling towards it, the
Mm-hmm.
last thing they want to do is take their vacation on Hanukkah to come back here. But he's traveling
Exactly.
back with his friends, with his peers. He wants to show them.
Unbelievable.
So that really is something. But I think, at the end of the day, as shluchim, we have to remember our first and most important shluchas, our first and most important responsibility is towards our family.
Mm-hmm.
And despite all the good things that we're involved in and all the care we have for everything, our family always comes first, and it
Mm-hmm.
always will come first. There's a time last year, actually this year, it was January, when one of my kids needed a little extra attention, with some tutoring and everything else. I needed to have some time in the States. And there was the question, and doing it online just wasn't practical. So we had to
Mm-hmm.
decide, are we going to go there for 2 months and kind of pause on our mission here? Not pause, but do it from afar. And there's no question about it. My wife went there. So I traveled back and forth, but she was there for two
Mm-hmm.
months for our son. And I think for my son, it also gave him a big indicator that you're always going to be first,
You're the
and
priority,
you're the
sure.
priority, and our kids are the priority. If at some point
Mm-hmm.
we would have felt that there was some need of our kids that was required vital attention, and would require us to, they come first. So I think the fact that we're here doing what we're doing, but they know they've always been our priority and they are our priority, that's what gives. And I think this applies in every aspect of life. You're a business, you could be making big money and being successful and everything else, but family has to come first. I feel that's what God demands of us. That's the responsibility we have as parents towards our kids. You could be the best rabbi, the best rebbitzin, the most successful, but that's not, at the end of the day, your first responsibility. Your first responsibility is towards your kids. And I feel by making them feel that they're the first always, that gives us and them the feeling that, yes, we are where we're meant to be, and we're not scared to be here, and we're doing what we're meant to do. Because if at some point something's here, we're always going to be looking out for their well-being first and
Right, for
foremost.
sure. For sure. Tell us a little about the geographical area. Like, how close is the closest Jewish community next to you?
So I'd say the closest community is probably about 4 hours away, 4 hour drive. But because for us, because the airport's closed, it's gotten a lot more difficult. So it used to be you just sit in
Mm-hmm.
the airport, and an hour and a half you're in Moscow, and an hour, any connection, you could be in New York in 14 hours. A quick stop in Moscow
Mm-hmm.
and in New York. So we have different communities that we also support. Also, some of the area where the war was, when things went bad 2 years ago, we got a call from neighboring Mariupol. They uh, they were devastated. They were dealing with a
Mm-hmm.
horrific situation, and Jews there were stuck. And I got a call from a non-Jewish neighbor of a Holocaust survivor, and she was all alone in the world, no
Mm-hmm.
relatives, no children. And they called and asked, "Would you be willing to help this woman?" And I said, "Of course." And they said, "You realize that we were Mariupol, Ukraine?" I said, "So what?" They said, "It could be, maybe it's not beneficial to you." I said, "When it comes to saving the life of another person, you don't make calculations how. Our job is to help everyone." And I went and met her by the border. They brought her to the border. We took her from the border. We brought her here. We put her in a hotel. She couldn't walk up flights of steps. It was on the ground floor. And we did everything we could to bring her back to health. Doctors, attention.
Wow.
Took a bunch of months. And eventually, when people heard that we did this, they started calling. We ended up bringing over 300 such people from Mariupol and some other cities to Rostov. The vast majority
And
of
the,
them.
and the government was okay with this.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. We were our job. Back in the day, I often say, back in the day, Jews lived in a shtetl, and one day the shtetl was part of this country, that country. There was stuff going on all the time. The Jews always cared that they should look out to help one another,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and not get involved in the big. Our job is to help to make sure that the well-being of our people on both sides of the border, and we brought in hundreds of these people, and they lived by us for 2 months. It was very difficult. We got
Mhm.
we got
Wow.
very little support for them, because when people heard that it's in Russia, they said, "We don't want to support." So I said, "Okay,
Mhm.
we'll do it ourselves." We fed them, we clothed them, we put them in hotels. Every day we had them coming to our shul. It took about a month and a half till the vast, or 2 months till we were able to send the most of them to Israel. One of them decided she wanted to go to Germany. It took me 5 months, 4 months dealing with every German
Mhm.
community till I found one that was willing to take her. and she's so connected to us. I went to visit her in Frankfurt because
Wow.
she's all alone in the world, and her most difficult time in her life, she was here with us. We celebrated her birthday together. We took care of her. So to this day, we're in touch with her. So the geographically we're located next to the border. We're in a place that's Donetsk, Lugansk is right. Donbass is right in this area. The city of Rostov has great significance because it was the home of Chabad 100 years ago. It was the capital of Chabad. This is where the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe is buried. This is where the sixth Rebbe became Rebbe. This is where our Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe, met his Rebbe and his wife for the first time, and his father-in-law, the sixth Rebbe. There's a lot of significance in the city.
What was that part of what drew you to Rostov?
100. So I didn't say the story, but in short, we had a deal with my wife when we got engaged that we're not going to move to Russia. And I kept to that part. I kept to that part of the deal. We moved to California. When I finally got the offer, and we were in Pasadena, a beautiful city, working with the local Chabad shluchim under them. It was a beautiful experience. When I got the call offering me to come be a shliach in Russia, I right away said, I have a deal with my wife. It's not going to work. But then when they said Rostov, I was like, wow, we're being offered to become Chabad shluchim emissaries in the city that was the Rebbe Rashab city, the six Rebbes. Like this is like being offered to become the mayor of New York. You know what I mean? Like again, it just having the privilege of going to help strengthen Judaism in a city with so much history it just felt like such a privilege. And that's when my wife had a few talks, a few shots of schnapps, and she finally agreed. We came to check it out, and she agreed, and we moved, and the rest is history. So it's been 16 years. 16 years that when we first came here, my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, she called me. She called me into the other room like this. And my wife came along. She's like, "You stay behind." When your mother-in-law calls you and she tells her daughter to like stay behind, nothing good's gonna come out of that conversation. And she had one question, like, "Why are you taking my daughter to Russia?" And I said that we're going there to inspire the local Jews. We're going there to help the local Jews. They need it more than anyone, and we're able to do that. We both, I have some Russian I picked up, and she's willing to do it. And that's as the Rabbi taught us to go where we're needed, not where we wanted. So can I say that she accepted that? She didn't, but she heard it. But now, 16 years later, it's become very clear that we're not inspiring the local Jews. It's the local Jews that are inspiring us. Every single day, every experience we have with Jews of Rostov, of all ages, children, teenagers, students, young professionals, the elderly especially, inspire us to the core of our souls. And that's why we have to realize, by the Rebbe taught that by helping others, you're helping yourself. The best way to be able to help yourself in any aspect, spiritually, materially, physically, go and help others, and that will lift yourself. So that's not the reason we do it, but by helping others, we've realized 16 years that we've been inspired, we've been recharged. You're asking what gives us the energy? It's just helping other people and thinking constantly what we could do to alleviate some of the difficulties, burdens, stresses that others have. And that just empowers you. It gives you koach, it gives you strength, and you just continue, always thinking what we could do more to help more and more people.
Incredible, really incredible, really inspiring. Thank you so much for this interview. Last question that I have for you: what would you like to see in the future? What is your goal for the future? What would you like to accomplish?
Listen, everything we're doing is with one goal in mind. We want Mashiach to come, that the world, there should be real peace. And, we pray about this for 2,000 years. That's what's in our mind, in our prayers. What we want to accomplish to that end is to find everything we can to find every last Jew in this part of the world. The amount when people discuss what's the population of Russia, so you look in the official numbers, maybe 100,000, but that's nonsense. There's 5 times, 6 times, 7 times more. And how do you find? Because they've been lost. So our goal is that while we're here in Rostov, to be able to find every last Jew, to do our part, to make them proud of who they are. I believe our ancestors are up there, and they're remembering. Every Jewish family has, if you go up 3 generations, there are Jewish names already. Avram, Sarah, Isaac, Leah, all the names are Jewish. Now they're not. So I feel every time we find another Jew, there's up there a celebration up there in heaven of the ancestors that had Jewish names. They did everything to somehow hold on to Jewish life, but at some point it became too difficult for one of their children or offspring, and now they're coming back, so it brings great joy. So What do I hope to accomplish? I hope to accomplish. Yes, we have plans. We have plans to build a building for a special needs center. We have plans to expand our efforts with children, with our camps. We have a lot of plans. But those are all just the real plan is to find every single last Jew and to help them in every possible way so that they could feel they're not alone. They could feel that, in Rostov, there's not 20 synagogues. There once was 15 synagogues before the war. Today there's one shul, we didn't discuss, 150-year-old camp built by Cantonist soldiers, Jewish soldiers. So today, if we don't find them, if we don't help them, no one will. So our goal and our dream is through our teams of people that are working for us in our community, in our schools, in our organizations, that we should find and be able to impact and help every Jew of Rostov. I feel if we did that, we're fulfilling our mission, making the world a better place and preparing it for Mashiach.
Amen. Amen. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for inspiring. You definitely inspired me with so many of your messages.
So I want to end off by giving you a formal invitation on behalf of myself and my wife. When things settle down a little, we're more than happy to welcome you here. When we lived in California, I would invite people to come visit us. And every week I'd get a call, we're in the area. Can we come for Shabbos? Right. For 16 years, we've been inviting people. A few people have taken us up for the offer. So I'm throwing it out there. When you're ready, when all the other things on your list, the destinations have already been Rostov.
Rostov. We'll put that on the top.
It should be an easy sell. Your mother was from this part of the world.
Right.
What
100%. 100%. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, and continued success in everything that you do. And may your goals and dreams be actually fulfilled in all ways, in the best way possible.
May all our goals. I think we have many similar goals. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, I thought that was such an incredible interview with Rabbi Chaim Danziger from Rostov. It was just incredible to hear, amazing to hear the different lifestyle that he's living there, the different challenges and inconveniences that are there. And yet his strong belief, his strong conviction in what he's doing was really so beautiful to hear. I loved his message about, though, how each and every one of us is really a shliach wherever we are. Wherever we are, we can be doing whatever needs to be done. And we just need to open our eyes to see the situation that we're in and see that as a point of our opportunity. I really, really loved how he was explaining the people in Russia, how they've been deprived of Judaism for so many years. And because of that, there was this thirst, this unquenchable thirst, and their neshamas, their souls were just so open, from older people who just loved every part of the experience. He spoke about that sukkah of that older woman, which was incredible, to younger children, that young boy, that teenager who wanted to have a bris milah, a circumcision, because he just was inspired. And that really shows the strength of the Jewish soul, and how you see it over and over and over again. After October 7th, especially, we see Jews everywhere are just so much coming forth. The neshama, the soul, is calling. And it's people like Rabbi Danziger and his wife, his family, shluchim all over, but each and every one of us who is a shliach, who has to come stand up and be there for them, use this as an opportunity to really help that soul find its heritage and find what it's so missing and so lacking and so desiring. And I thought that was really incredible. It was really just incredible to hear the difference of experiences in such a faraway place, and what he's really doing for his community, and how he's really lighting up Judaism in the hearts and souls of so many. If you're enjoying watching these interviews, I hope you are subscribed to Chabad.org/extraordinary. See us on Spotify as well. We are also on YouTube. You can watch us on any of these platforms. I hope you will give us a like, give us a heart, write a comment, share with us some feedback of what you were enjoying, what you got out of, what you personally took from this interview from Rabbi Chaim Danziger, and from what he is doing with his amazing, beautiful family in his community of Rostov. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for being part of our extraordinary community.